everybody. I'll be your host for the next 45 minutes. My name's Tom Elmer, and this is Using the Late Show for teaching a large class. So we're going to get into, first of all, let's set, just so you know, you are at the Late Show model for engaging large class sections, the good, the bad, and the ugly, and it is part of the engagement classroom channel, engaging students in our classrooms, just so you know. Now let's get this started. Isn't this true? Teachers open the door, but students must enter by themselves. We are teachers, and so we're going to talk a little bit about that, the relationship we have as teachers. Then I'm going to talk to you about my story and give you some context as to how this whole thing came about. I'm going to talk about what we did, what worked, and what didn't work. Now, you don't have to take notes. I have detailed information here about everything I talk about, instructions on how you can do every one of these things. Plus, there's some notes that were received unsolicited by my students, sent to me, which you'll get at the end of this session. I'd hand them out to you, but I'm sure there might be a student in here who starts reading them and not paying attention. We know we don't want that to happen. So when we talk about teachers, we think of the great Socrates. Very sad. This is when he drank the hemlock. And his students cried. Look it up, read it, it's very powerful. But think about the relationship, one teacher to one student. And now let's expand it. One teacher to 10 students, one teacher to 20 students, one teacher to 40 students. That is where I lived before I stepped into this classroom of 180 students. Never before in my life have I seen that many kids in one place. Socrates, the way he modeled asking questions to drill down is still a powerful method of teaching today. So this is the 1 to 20 model. I taught a class this semester that size, and I loved it. To me, it's the perfect size. 40 is a little too many, 20 was perfect. But this is what I walked into. I knew this, I had this picture in my mind. I'm going to have all these kids with all these laptops just waiting for me. What am I going to do? See, I have to tell you, I am not an academic. I'm a marketer. I spent my life marketing and selling and doing all those things. And I've always wanted to teach. Now, when I was a vice president of sales and marketing, I taught throughout my career. I remember a session I did to our management about how to build a positive attitude. I taught salespeople how to present. So I've been teaching throughout my career, but I've never been a full-time teacher. Until one day, Evan Curry, who was the new dean at Caron University in Langhorne, Pennsylvania, picked up the phone and called me and said, I need a marketing teacher. I said, well, I guess I am as good as any marketing teacher you could hire. I'll give it a shot, but first I got to run it by the boss. My beautiful bride, Susan, who's in the front row. And I would not be standing here now without her 110% support. She said, yep, and we were on our way. Now, if you have not read this book, I really recommend it because it kind of changed my philosophy on life. In this book, the Zanders, a husband and wife team, they talk about contribution and making a difference. And there's one thing in there about giving an A and let people to live into it. Now, every principles class I teach, I start out by saying, you will get an A if you do the following things. If you read the chapter, you come to class, read it before you show up, come to class, and after the class is over, I will post up my PowerPoint, review it, and come to class, and I'll work with you. I'm here to report not every student gets an A. I give them that opportunity, but not every student participates. So like every other teacher, I have a teacher story that begins with a teacher that had a great impact in my life, Paul Arsenal. He was my teacher when I received my MBA here at Westchester. He judged my final project. I loved his class. Understand, I went back to school after 15 years working professionally, so I was scared to death. And his class was my favorite class in my MBA program. And so when I took this job to teach at Caron University, I called him and said, hey man, would you meet with me? I need some help, I'm scared. And so he shared the syllabuses and really helped me. So, as it turns out, he reached out to me in the summertime and said, hey, how would you like to teach at Westchester? Whoa, now we're talking major leagues. 3 classes of marketing principles. I said, I'm up to the challenge. My wife endorsed it, and away we went. Now, I had to think, what kind of a teacher do I want to model myself after? And these are the two that I thought of. Robin Williams in Dead Poets Society. Sidney Poitier in To Sir with Love. Now, what is it about these teachers that I thought was so special? It was the fact they did more than teach. They impacted the lives of their students. And that's what I wanted to do. I didn't just want to be a teacher. Now, I should have paid attention because they both lost their jobs. They both got fired. That's not a smart move for an adjunct, i.e. temporary faculty member. Before I get into this, I have acknowledgments. First, I acknowledge my wife, Yannick, and everyone in faculty mentoring, Michelle and everyone that helps us adjuncts teach better, Letitia and the whole D2L crew, Pat and the faculty and staff learning team, tech support, my dean, Evan Leach, the business school team, my chair, Yang Wang, and my instructional designer, Tommy P. And now, let's hear him live from Colorado.
Hello from lovely Snowmass, Colorado. My name is Tom Pantazis, and I'm an instructional designer with the Office of Distance Education here at Westchester University. As you can see, I'm on a special and somewhat last-minute family vacation, but one of the benefits of video is that I can still have a little bit of presence here with you in this presentation. One of the great things about being an instructional designer is working with faculty like Tom Elmer on solving interesting instructional problems, such as how to keep a large class of students engaged and excited about course content. Tom had some great ideas when he came to me, but working collaboratively, we were able to refine them and turn them from idea into reality. Over the next few minutes, the other Tom is going to share with you what those different ideas were and how they worked. I'll pop back in a little while with some of my own commentary, but I hope you're having a good conference, and I'm sorry that I can't be there with you today.
Late Night with David Letterman is where I got my inspiration. I thought about what could I do that would get through 180 kids. I actually was on the show, believe it or not. He had a Philadelphia show, and I created this goofy Homer hat, these T-shirts. These folks were on both the 12:30 and the 11:30 show, and it was cool to shake their hands. But I start every class with this. As a matter of fact, today would have been Eric's 23rd birthday. My wife and I were away in Jamaica during spring break. And because it's one of them resorts, everything's wired. And so we're sitting on the beach, and I pull up my phone. And Rebecca, my friend, writes, "Today, I got the knock on the door that no parent wants to hear. My beautiful son is gone. Hashtag suicide." Can't tell you how that destroyed me. I looked for that young man every day on campus. That year, I never ran into him. I watched him grow up on Facebook. I immediately talked to the class about it. I talk about it every class. The first session and the last session, no matter what class I teach or where I teach it. This is what his mother wrote today in honor of her son. The struggle that he had fought, this he made his freshman year to remind himself to keep fighting. Eric's story was featured in our school paper. This is what his mom said. She suggested, this is a true story, I read this. Eric submitted a written assignment to a professor detailing his struggle with depression. I know it's more than that. He said he was having trouble. He wasn't taking his medication. He was struggling. And it was never brought forth, even though us professors know there's a means to do that. According to Rebecca, my friend, she was told professors just want to teach, and this system is a work of progress. Now, I'm not telling you that would have saved that young man's life. No way, no how, because he was bullied as a kid, and he could never shake that off. When they finally found a suicide note buried in a computer, that was the reason. So I immediately signed up for mental health first aid. That's my friend Amanda. If you don't know Amanda, I'm not going to tell you her story, but it's one of the most powerful stories because of what she does today and what she experienced in her life. but she taught me not to be afraid. And that allowed me, when I received an email from one of my students this past semester, I had shot an email to that student and said, hey man, where is your simulation quarter? You haven't submitted the last two. And he shot me an email back. I'm sorry, professor, to let you down. My girlfriend broke up with me, man. All I've been doing is crying. I just want to kill myself. And immediately I responded with an email. Where are you right now? Meet me for coffee, which he did. And I made sure he had an appointment with his psychiatrist that day. And I can tell you right now, that crisis we worked through. A lot of suicide crisis can be worked through. And so I was able to do that because I felt strong enough because of that training. Another thing I tell my students, I share with a story about my own personal life where I remember clearly walking out of my school library. I was a sophomore. It was a spring. And I just stopped. I said, why am I so sad? I can't shake it. Turns out depression runs deep in my family. And I got a good case of it. Now, generally, I learned this, depression just shows up age 32. Showed up earlier for me. But I want my students to know that they can feel safe with me on anything related to a mental crisis. So as a marketer, I know that I got to go for my customers. I got to meet my customers where they are, and that's Gen Z, baby. They're all these things: digital natives, entrepreneurial, diverse, less religious, blurry, overwhelmed, lonely, progressive, individualistic. If you were in the session this morning on compassion, you learned a lot about some of the struggles that these kids are going through. Now, I close my session, my class, with this quote. Teachers open the door, but you must enter by yourself. So when they come in the door, this is the teacher that's waiting for them. Marketing professor Tom Elmer, half teacher, half preacher, half stand-up, half motivational speaker, but always 100% real. That is who I am. Now, I'm also this guy because all around me in this giant marketing principles class are people that don't want to be there. The only people that want to be there are the marketing people. The finance people, the accounting people, the economics people, they can't stand it. I even had a finance student once raise their hand, why am I going to take marketing? So let me tell you two things. Do you want to work in a business? Yeah. Okay. Businesses exist to find and to keep customers. Well, if we don't, and customers are what marketing's all about. So you don't have a finance job if we don't have customers. I think that I got the student's attention. He definitely started paying more attention. Another thing that I believe is that I have as a marketing teacher that maybe some of you don't have in your disciplines is they already understand the very important points of the 4 Ps. The 4 Ps of product, price, promotion, and place. A professional marketer, someone in the field is using those 4 things. And so I just say, hey, you know it already. You've seen a lemonade stand. The P for product is the lemonade. The P for place is wherever the stand is set up. The P for promotion is your sign. And by the way, I love the fact that these young entrepreneurs wanted to sell an add-on sale of some oranges. Love that. They could have priced the two together and, got a good deal. And then P for promotion, that's the sign. Those are the 4 Ps. My students walk in inherently knowing this, and I use this over and over and over again. This was a Harvard Business Review article. I also know that they're going to forget everything. If you don't use your new information, 75% will go out your brain in 6 days. So I know that too. So I had to come up with something that would live on beyond the remember for the test, forget the next morning. 2 things I stress in every class is the need for a growth mindset. I know it works because at one time in my life, I lived in a fixed mindset. The other thing I talk a lot about is the importance of reading books. A growth mindset and reading books. Why are these so important that my students need to know? Because when they graduate, it's estimated 5 years after they get out, 80% of what they've learned is obsolete. If they don't have the skill to keep learning, they're going to wither and die. Those folks that don't know how to learn will just not be able to deal with the new world. The world is changing so rapidly. So this is how they met me. Winter is coming to Westchesteros. Anybody that knows Game of Thrones knows that. And this email they got on Monday, the night before they walked in my class. Summer is over. Fall is upon us in the land of Westchesteros. Yet we know that, too, will not last forever. There's a dark period, a coldness. When events turn against us, winter is coming. I'm also here to warn you that the game of marketing is coming, where classmate competes against classmate in leading the marketing department of a new tech startup, where in the end, only one team will sit upon the throne of market success. Winter is coming. Prepare to have your skill tested. Game of marketing. The big learning piece of my class was this simulation that was going to take place in the month of November. And so I wanted to dress it up with this game of marketing. At first I was going to make it a competition, teams of 2 competing against other teams. But I had to throw that out the window because on average 20 kids cut my class every time. Worst, I think I had 45 kids one time. Oh, the funnest one was when I took attendance. And actually, I gave out an assignment, and a bunch of them were walking out on me. Where'd everybody go? We were supposed to pair and share. They didn't do that. They didn't share, so they all split. So I said, okay, how many of you want me to take attendance again and throw that one out? Yeah! Next thing you know, they're coming running back. Well, that was fun. And by the way, I told them I'm a stickler on attendance. I never intended attendance to roll into their grade unless someone was between a grade and it was going to push it up. They didn't find that out to the very end. I just wanted to motivate as many kids to show up. When you're losing 20 students at a time, that's brutal. And so I invented the White Walkers. If you watched Game of Thrones, White Walkers are these zombie-like creatures that individually go out into the world and wreak havoc. Now I'm hoping my students were out not wreaking havoc, but they were playing this simulation game. And it's based on this model that as pilots, they spend hours and hours in a simulator before they ever get to fly a plane. This simulation actually is based around this idea. You're working for an established bike manufacturing company, and new technology has been discovered where you can now do 3D printing on a carbon steel bike at a fraction of the cost to the exact sizes of the person that's buying it. And it is a slick, I cannot tell you how my classes love it. I can't tell you how much they learn. It is a fantastic learning experience. So this shows you, I use all 3 of them in all my classes. This was the introduction to bikes. It takes you through the basic concepts, customers' needs, marketing strategy, branding, pricing, advertising, distribution, customer feedback, competitor data, profitability, and everything is based around a balanced financial scorecard. Let me tell you, marketers that are marketing with finance involved have a leg up when they get out in the world, because a lot of marketers have lost their juice in companies because they're all talk, no action. You walk into a company and you say, okay, what are our financial goals and how can I support those in marketing? You sure you're a marketer? Yeah, that's the marketer of today. And I love the fact that they have to do these micro simulations, that I make accountants do product design, internet marketing, economic majors, paid advertising. I want them to try it all, because guess what? This is the one and only marketing class that those folks will take. So I knew this was my one shot to make an impact, because, look, I tell my students, there are 2 kinds of people in this world. Those that love marketing and those who don't yet know they love marketing. And it is evident where I stand on that equation. If there's another professor here that loves marketing more than me, I'd like to meet that person. Because I just can't stop reading, listening to podcasts, reading books. Ask my wife, all the Amazon books to get. I got to stop that. No more books. I mean, I just love to learn. And there's a reason for that. The subject that I teach, Adobe surveyed chief marketing officers, surveyed VPs of marketing, and they said, Marketing has changed more in the last 2 years than all the years since advertising on television started. If you're not up to date, you're doing your students a disservice. At least that's how I feel. So here's how it's based around. It's like a slick Apple store. No inventory. This is how the stores are set up. You compete across the whole world. It's a fantastic experience. Now, the second piece of the game is the quiz show. And it evolved this way. And by the way, I wore this goofy thing on my first date with my wife. And the fact that she actually decided to go out on a date with me told me she's a keeper, and we're married today, so what's that tell you? All right, and she was okay to be seen with me in public, so I was okay to do my marketing quiz show. This icon I use on all my social media. By the way, if you've got Gen Zs, I have an Instagram, got a Twitter, I got a YouTube channel, and by the way, if you want to see all my videos, Marketing Professor Tom Elmer, I use that all across my platforms. You can see every video I did. You also see my Ramma Jamma, a character I created for my football players and my field hockey players, just because I'm crazy. So that's the marketing quiz show. Now here's a sample of one of my questions. Peter Drucker is A, the rapper originally known as Grandpa Vanilla Ice, B, the original drummer for the Hall of Fame rock and roll band the Rolling Stones, or C, referred to as the grandfather of modern marketing due to his forward-thinking ideas about its role in customers. By the way, the answer was always C. Always. This had to be the easiest quiz because I needed kids to have the guts to get up, get out of their seat, and come up on my stage. And that is tough. I read the comments in the research I collected the last week of my class, and a lot of students said that they're overwhelmed by the size of these big classes. The random acts of marketing kindness. Now, I don't know if this was a success, but the way this whole thing evolved, I explained it in detail on LinkedIn. If you link in with me, please do. You can see this. I tell the story how it happened, but I'm just going to give you the highlight. This summer when I took that first aid for mental health class, a clip was showed of a gentleman who jumped off the Golden Gate Bridge and lived. And they talked about the day that he did it. His dad knocked on the door. His dad knew something was desperately wrong. And, son, I need you to come to work with me today. He says, no, Dad, it's okay. He had made up his mind. And by the way, that's when the alarm bells ring. When somebody, you learn this in training, you ask them, are you thinking of committing suicide? And the second question is, have you planned a method on how you're going to do that? If the answer is yes, ring the alarm bells, call 911. That is, send out the alarm. That is, and so this man had made his plan. But he was crying. On the bus, he was crying. People just got up and walked away. As he walked to the street before he jumped, they crossed the street to get away from him. He got to the place on the bridge where he was going to jump. He put one hand on both sides, and he's heaving and sobbing, and he feels a tap on his back, and the woman pushes a camera in his face and said, will you take my picture? And through tears, he says he took it. But he said, if she had said to me, are you okay? Can I call 911? He wouldn't have done it. So I had this crazy idea that I could create random acts of kindness, and maybe, just maybe, we could save one person. And I can't tell you, we didn't get many. But was it a failure? No. One of the posts we got was 2 of my students were coming home after the bars on a Saturday night. An Uber pulled up. Westchester student spilled out drunk, unconscious. They lifted her up, carried her to her apartment, made sure she was safe. Is that an act of kindness, Professor? Let me think. I have 2 daughters, I've got 2 granddaughters, I got 3 sisters, my wife, my stepdaughter. Yeah, it's an act of kindness. Something bad could have happened, and you saved that woman. So I have these cards at the end. You can take some. This thing is still going to go on next semester. I'm going to retool it, come back and try something bigger and better. So now Tom's going to join us and talk a little bit about how he helped me through some of this.
One of the services the Office of Distance Education provides is help integrating or merging instructional ideas with technical tools. The Random Acts of Kindness activity was an example of that type of collaboration. Tom knew what he wanted to do, but was unsure of what tools to use. In a consultation meeting with myself and our educational technologist, Kristen Herman, we were able to settle on using Padlet as the right tool and work with Tom to get it set up and ready to go. Another example of the collaborative process was Tom's use of weekly videos. Right at the start of the semester, he talked about wanting to do a video for the game of marketing as a spin-off on the Game of Thrones. He worked with me to schedule a time to come into our one-button studio, which you see I am in right now, and film himself in a costume in front of the green screen. We replaced the background with the Game of Thrones image, and voila, the whole process from start to finish was about 45 minutes of work for what is about a 30-second video. Video is a powerful engagement tool and a presence generator. For example, I have some presence at this conference right now via this video, even though you know I'm halfway across the country. In a moment, Tom's going to talk about how he used podcasting as another means of engagement and connection with his students. This is the third example of the collaborative support provided by an instructional designer. Tom just needed some guidance on things like microphone setup, as well as how to approach using podcasts instructionally. The support I provided was just a conversation with some questions to help him think through his ideas and approach. In all three instances, the support of the designer amplified and improved what were already good ideas that Tom brought to the table. If you work here at Westchester University, you too can take advantage of this collaborative process. Reach out to Distance Education to connect with your designer today.
Okay, podcast. I was at at this very meeting and learned about podcasts. There was a session, and so the fellow that did it, I ran into him at Saxby's. I said, "How hard?" He said, "Man, it's easy. Do this, bing, bing, bing." So I offered podcasts up to my students as a tool for them to help study each chapter. I basically reviewed the PowerPoint highlights, and one of my students shot me this. This was his favorite music. And he loved the fact that my podcast showed up as his favorite podcast. Thought I'd get a kick out of it. He was absolutely right. Now, we had a Halloween party, but I don't know where that picture went. And here's some of them. This was my favorite video. This is my clown one. I had a clown horn. In fact, if you watch the final video, some of my favorite characters appear in it. So that's on my YouTube channel. But this was my student's favorite one. This was called Let the Good Times Roll. I decided, after looking at that first test, it was horrible. So that night I said, let the good times roll. The curve is in. You're going to love this, my friend. And I'm playing, French Creole, Zydeco music in the background. Long story short, they loved that the most because the grades went up. So when the student is ready, the teacher will appear. When the student is truly ready, the teacher will disappear. This quote is my life. I tell them, when I was in their chairs, I was not ready to be taught. I was too busy having fun. Again, I did well in the classes I liked. I already knew that I would get a job as a salesperson. I had sales in my past. I figured that's where I was going to end up. But when I got a job in sales and marketing, I had to start learning more about it to be successful. It got to the place where I just fell in love with it, fell in love with learning, and it became my passion. And so on the last class, these two won first and second place. They receive a trophy. And this young lady won honorable mention for third place. Now these two showed up in my video, the last video, and they got, I created those certificates of achievement. Look, Fiverr is the greatest thing, man. If you don't need it anytime soon, it's very cheap to have them design your stuff. That's on my handout for you to take with you. And I always do this last lecture for all my classes. This is just the latest. And look, this is the thrill of victory. Look, if you don't read your Rate My Professors, you're missing out. You know why? Because I liken that to the fact rate my professors like Yelp, and we are like the restaurants, and our students are like the customers, and they are giving ratings. Just like when I managed the catering business, a lot of times they give you a bad rating because maybe they didn't do something right. So this one here, the student referenced, final lecture is truly inspiring. I have taken this, I've used this lecture since I was a practitioner, and I adapted it. Now here's the agony of defeat. This kid did not get me. As long as you show up, he gives you hundreds on everything. That's a lie. Not everybody got an A in my class. They could have. I gave them the formula. Not every student wanted to follow it. So here's just 2 slides. Don't be a you know what. And this gives you some advice that I've learned the hard way in my life. This was a sign I found on a Napa buyer's desk, and I've loved it, about the power of perspective. There's tragedy, then there's burnt potatoes. You need to learn the difference between the two. Now, here's a note I received from a student. I want to thank you for the advice you gave because it will stick with me for the rest of my life. I honestly will never forget that slide because you opened my eyes. She goes in to describe a relationship with a man that was just a bad deal. And she summarizes, there is tragedy and there are burnt potatoes, and he was just an ugly pile of burnt potatoes. Oh, I love that, man. That made me smile. Now, this was a note from a student that went to a school that had these 300 to 500 big classes. In contrast to those professors at that school, you're passionate, understanding, enthusiastic, dedicated. It's helped inspire me. Your love for teaching and the love for those you teach is genuine. Thanks for teaching me to love marketing again. Remember, there's 2 kinds of people. I got one to cross over to love marketing, like me. So did it work? I promised you I'd give you those details. October 1st, I took a pulse. I wanted to see how well we were doing. And so, oh man, everybody loved this, loved this. The quiz show, they said, hey, please stop with those funny quiz show questions. Make them more like the test. Too easy. So I fixed that up. The videos keep letting us out early. And the reason I had to do that, the classroom we were in, main hall, it was a sweat box in the summer. In the fall, it was a freezing, it was ice box in the winter. So look, after we're done, I'm not keeping them around. So it's just uncomfortable. We opened the doors, we moved on. I use real world examples, and I am quite exuberant, and so sometimes I have to be reminded to calm down and slow down. So what would you give as an overall rating for this class? 78%. Excellent or very good. Did it increase your interest in marketing? 85%. Strongly or mostly agree. What rating would you give the teacher? 91%. Excellent or very good. Every activity in my class was rated as helpful or very helpful by the majority of my students. That is my presentation. Thank you. Any questions? And by the way, handouts are here in this box, as well as I want to make a plug for this book. If you want to take the power of marketing into your classroom, this book, in fact, we're using it in our book club. This book is phenomenal. The man that wrote it was a marketer, and he taught K-12, and he shows why those things can change your class. Highly recommend it. All right, well, thank you so much. I appreciate you coming.